like to call to order the regular meeting of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury for Thursday, June 2nd, 2016. We're going to have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Vice President McMillan. Please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Just want to thank you for the many blessings you give us every day. Thank you for the grace that you pour out upon us. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for our country, our state, and our parish. We ask you bless this meeting and watch over us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir, Mr. Angelpont?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnum?
Here.
Mr. Petrie?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mr. Latour?
Here.
Mr. Ms. Mayo, excuse me. Vice President McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Trimming? Here. Mr. White?
Here.
And President Lee.
Here.
Everyone's
Thank you, Kathy. Item 4, take appropriate action on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, we have no applications before you tonight. No action
Great.
necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Item 5, consideration of approving payment of all current invoices.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second by Mr. Brame. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 6, consideration of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated May 5th, 2016. Got a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 7, consideration of approving the Public Works Committee report dated May 26, 2016. Mr. Farnum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Works Committee met last Thursday on May 26 and addressed the following items. Item A was acknowledged appearance by Ms. Sherry Swallow, recently named Director of the Imperial Calcasieu Regional Planning and Development Commission. Item B, recommended that a resolution be adopted approving an agreement for the purchase of property for the North Frontage Road project in Ward 4. C, recommended that an ordinance be adopted and/or existing ordinances amended establishing no parking on Topsy Road in Ward 3. Item D, recommended that an ordinance be adopted and/or existing ordinances amended establishing a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on Podrasky Road in Ward 1. Item E, advised that the Calcasieu Parish was found to be in compliance by the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development for the 2015 annual review. That ends my report, and I move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Farnum. I have a motion by Mr. Farnum, second by Mr. White. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 8, consideration of approving the Agenda Committee report dated May 26, 2016. Got a motion by Mr. Giddey.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 9, consideration of approving the parish-wide drainage liaison committee report dated June 2nd, 2016. Had a motion by Mr. Brame, second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objections? Go ahead, Mr. Scott, give us the report.
All right.
Hey, it didn't have it on here, I
Thank you,
apologize.
Mr. President. Our parish-wide drainage liaison committee met this afternoon at 4 p.m. and received an update from staff regarding the parish-wide draining initiative. Staff presented a timeline for key activities which kicked off in early January of this year when public open house meetings were held. At this time, the outcomes of those public outreach meetings were reported to the jury. In keeping with that timeline, staff continues to develop and refine new drainage concepts and solutions that will continue through the spring and includes a series of stakeholder-focused group meetings, go-group task force meetings, and public input. On this stage of the process, when this stage is process is complete, staff will come before the jury in the fall of this year to present final recommendations regarding parish-wide drainage. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Okay, we had a motion and second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Mr. Scott, go
Real
ahead.
quick, when we have our stakeholder group meetings, I know I read in the paper last week, Lake Charles has now got their own drainage committee that they put together. Make sure you personally invite Mr. Mark Eckert and that committee to make it to that stakeholder group. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 10, advise that at its regular public meeting on Tuesday, July 19, 2016, at 5:30 p.m., the police jury intends to levy the following 2016 maintenance tax millage rates as submitted by the parish tax assessor. Criminal Justice System maintenance, 3.02 mills. Courthouse Complex and Correctional Center maintenance, 3.12 mills. Mosquito control maintenance, 2.30 mills. Airport District Number 1 maintenance, 0.60 mills. Burton Coliseum and Agricultural Services maintenance, 1.43 mills. Health Unit maintenance, 2.37 mills. Juvenile Detention maintenance, 3.33 mills. Road and Drainage maintenance, 3.88 mills. Ward 3 Fire Protection District Number 2, 11.54 mills. Library maintenance, 5.51 mills. Sewage District Number 11 of Wards 3 and 8, maintenance, 7.02 mills. Waterworks District Number 5 of Wards 3 and 8, maintenance, 5.24 mills. Waterworks District Number 5 of Wards 3 and 8, debt service, 0.25 mills. Waterworks District Number 2 of Ward 4, maintenance, 6.38 mills. I am going to assume those were all renewals. Is that correct?
Mr. Landry, this is a reassessment year, 2016.
I'm sorry.
So all of these, I think with the exception of 2, and Tammy can correct me if I miss them, are rollbacks.
Okay, so you're rolling them all back.
The 2 the reason they're not rolled back, it's Ward 3 Fire Protection 2 and Waterworks 2 of Ward 4, which is Mossville, because they had elections, and that rate goes in place. It's just coincidental, it's the same year.
But all the parish millages, direct parish millages, have all been rolled back. That way we
That's
collect the same amount of money, not more.
on existing properties, that's correct.
I got Tammy smiling back there, so that must be correct. Okay, we need a motion, or no, do we? It's just an advice? Okay. Everybody was real quiet. I thought they didn't want to make a motion on a tax issue. 11's also an advice item. Oh, did he? I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan did not give you your blue card. Number 9, yes it is. Go ahead, Mr. Atherton.
Number 9,
Come to the podium and you know the drill. State your name and address for the record, please.
is it 9 or 10?
Charlie Atherton, 122 Vine Street. And I always appreciate your tolerance and hearing our
Also,
concerns and your
I'm sorry to
interests.
interrupt. We're going back to number 9 also.
This is number 9.
Yeah. He chose number 9 and I was not given the slip, so we're going to back up. My apologies.
Oh, no, I just appreciate it. Our concern is, well, let me say what I got to say, and then I'll give you the rest of it. We believe our drainage districts have been unfairly attacked by the recent KPLC editorial, and the public in the drainage districts deserve a response from this Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. The districts operate off of a maintenance tax, and we ask that a point-by-point reply be given to the public by the police jury to address each specific point raised in a recent KPLC editorial criticizing all local drainage districts. We specifically asked for a response to the following points. They each have their own boards, employees, and equipment. And Calcasieu has succeeded in politicizing instead of managing water flow. In short, our broken political drainage system arguably causes more flooding than it mitigates. Water flows throughout the parish, but we have pitted 7 political districts against each other. Consolidation of these dysfunctional political districts into one functional comprehensive drainage district is the only long-term solution. And it wasn't a plan, but I spent a lifetime, it turns out, just being interested in looking at how local government functions at all levels, and especially the boards. And every board you got is concerned about this, because the districts got left hanging out, and they don't have a whole lot to work with. And I can tell you from experience, years past, a lot of what they did was in spite of you guys. So they work off of, they actually do new construction, but they do it off of a maintenance millage. And my point is, for the sake of not only the public's interest in the drainage district, but all of the other service districts you have, I think they deserve, at your convenience, a respectable response to the concerns as we move forward, because they're all willing to work and move forward. But we just would appreciate some consideration by this jury. And again, I always appreciate you tolerating me, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton, and I will make a quick comment that some of the information that you referred to that was on the news, I don't think that, I mean, it was not intentional. There was some incorrect information. I mean, I will agree with you on that, but I don't think none of that was intentional, but appreciate your comments. Mr. Barris,
Thank you, Mr. President.
are we still on 9?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton, for calling everybody's attention to that. I doubt, I'm gonna speak for, hopefully speak for the whole jury. We're not gonna get, well, I tell you what, I'm back up to speak for myself. I'm not gonna let an editorial off the cuff spur me into doing anything that I'm not educated enough to do. We've got some good people in this room, in this building, that are handling up on this issue. And the old saying, walk a mile. I would encourage whoever made that editorial to walk more than a mile from that station, and they'll see the problems and how they are getting fixed. It's not just one little spot. And again, I'm going to reiterate the fact that all of our drainage, gravity drainage guys are doing a hell of a job, and we're going to get it right. But thank you for noticing, and we will get that response. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, since we're on number 9, is there any further discussion on 9? Okay, now we're going to go to item 11, which is also an advised item, that it's regular public meeting on Tuesday, July 19, 2016 at 5:30 p.m. The police jury intends to levy the following 2016 general purpose tax millage rates as submitted by the parish tax assessor, which is basically the same issue that was on number 10. Calcasieu Parish, except City of Lake Charles, Town of Benton, City of DeQuincy, City of Sulphur, and City of Westlake, 4.18 mills. Calcasieu Parish within corporate limits of City of Lake Charles, Town of Benton, City of DeQuincy, City of Sulphur, and City of Westlake, 2.09 mills. Item 12, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the proposed budget for the operation of the Southwest Louisiana Crime Laboratory. Yeah. Laboratory, not laboratory. For fiscal year 2016 and 2017, as requested by Sheriff Tony Mancuso. Mr. Anderpont.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would somebody please tell me how this works in a short dissertation? I don't need a long explanation.
We have someone here from the.
Yeah, Matt Vizano was here from the sheriff's office. Francis, I think it'd be helpful if he maybe came up.
Mr. Vizano, please state your name and your position with the department for the record.
I'm not questioning the request. I just got to go to the nuts and bolts of what we're doing.
I can make it short. Matt Vizano, Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office, Special Services Division Commander, which crime lab falls under my umbrella.
You got
if you will.
the titles, all I got.
Yeah. It just means they can assign anything to it. Basically how it works, the crime lab works for the 5 parish area, and we receive our revenue from court costs, other bonding, federal and state grants, and every year, all of the 5 police juries have to look at and approve our budget. Even though we don't receive any money from this body, we are.
You're talking about 5 parishes?
5 parishes. Yes, sir.
Works for me.
If that's the short of it.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Anderpont, Mr. McMillan.
Matt, did the crime lab play a role in this old cold case that they just found with the
Rose Barn. Yes, they did a very substantial amount of work on that. The CODIS hit was actually done by Louisiana State Police Crime Lab, but not without a lot of help from local lab.
It's worth the money. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. President. You said this crime lab, it operates for how many parishes?
5.
So we don't have 5 different crime labs for 5 parishes?
No, we have
And we
one.
wouldn't have more than one crime lab for Calcasieu Parish, like 7 or 8 crime labs for Calcasieu Parish, right?
No,
Okay, thank you.
no, it's a regional lab. Most of the other labs
And
in the
it's
state.
very efficient, by the way, very efficient. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Thank you, Mr. Vizina.
Thank you.
Okay, we had a motion by Mr. Brame, second by Mr. Hunter. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 13, consideration of adopting an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 6652
Second.
and ordinance number 6338 due to the prospective bidder failing to fulfill the necessary requirements in order to complete the adjudicated property sale. Had a motion by Ms. Trimmy, second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 14,
Move on
consideration
14.
of adopting an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 6717, which authorized the sale of property that was adjudicated prior to 1975 and should be sold through the State of Louisiana Land Office. I have a motion by Mr. Latour, second by Ms. Mayo. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 15,
Move on
consideration
15,
of adopting a
all bullets.
resolution approving the following request. A, submittal of Community Water Enrichment Fund grant applications on behalf of special service districts to the Louisiana Office of Community Development on a project-specific basis. B, execution of agreements with the Louisiana Office of Community Development for said grant awards. C, execution of sub-recipient agreements with said special service districts for said grant awards. I had a motion by Mr. Anderpont on all bullets. Is that correct, Mr. Anderpont? Correct. All bullets, Mr. Anderpont?
Yes.
And a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 16, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a grant agreement for grant funding for the youth, adults, and dislocated workers in the 6th Parish Consortium of Allen, Beauregard, Calcasieu, Cameron, Jefferson, Davis, and Vernon for the 2016-2017 funding year. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Ms. Mayo. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 17,
Move 17, all bullets.
take appropriate action on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for the following. A, May 4, 2016 was Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2016-03, overlaying of various roads. The parish engineer recommends that the low bid in the amount of $1,037,145.50 of Prairie Contractors, Inc. be accepted. B, official journal for a one-year period beginning July 1st, 2016. Staff recommends that the proposal of the Lake Charles American Press be accepted for a one-year period beginning July 1st, 2016. Had a motion by Mr. Scott, second by Ms. Mayo. Is there any discussion? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, hold on. Mr. Farnham? You're second.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. President. I guess I noticed that Tim's not here, but maybe Brian, I just was witness to this award-winning contractor here on a road overlay that it's taken about 5 or 6 months to do 10 miles of road. And I hope that we have some kind of teeth in our contracts that we're issuing to these guys that prevent that kind of, because they'd work on it for a couple of weeks, and they wouldn't work on it for a couple of weeks, and then they'd come back for a week and be gone for a month. And I hope we've got some teeth in our contracts that prevent this kind of activity from happening, so that we don't, cause any undue stress to the residents of the parish, that they get on a project and they work on it and they complete it and be done with it. So, just a comment.
Mr. Beam, do you want to comment on
Yeah,
that?
I'll ask Greg to come on up.
Greg, please state your name and
This is Tim
position
Dow.
with the parish for the record, please.
Greg LaFleur from the engineering department. We do follow the DOTD standards, and they actually have in the specifications timeframes for when contracts have to be signed, for whenever they actually have to start work, and we actually follow that, and we'll follow that closely. If it gets to the point, we can go ahead and issue notice to proceeds within that time frame.
That's kind of what scares me then, is this was a DOTD project that they were working on. So, I just hope we keep an eye on them and keep a tight rein on them, that we expedite these projects as best we can without having undue cost to the citizens, so,
And we
thank you.
still do have stipulated damages on all projects as well.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Farnum. Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. President. I've asked this question before. I've never heard that the American Press is doing this. But, Mr. Beam, what would happen if the American Press would go to just maybe 3 days a week? Would that affect who we use, or the actual definition of official journal in the year 2016? Is that still the newspaper?
Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong. It is. There's been a lot of bills in the legislature last few years trying to get that to where it doesn't need to be. It can be the website of the parish.
Right.
I don't think they've gotten there. Now, we're very capable of doing that, but if it goes to 3 days, honestly, I don't know if it's the only one and they bid on it, and that's that one with the largest circulation. I didn't know if it stipulated it had to be a daily. If it isn't, though, we'd have to do it.
Yeah.
So I think
guess
it would be official even if it were less.
Also, just the definition of official journal in today's day and age, I wonder if 10 years from now, when it says official journal, if people automatically think that's got to be a newspaper, if that might not be KPLCTV.com or something.
Honestly, it could change. I don't think we want to be a little careful about that, because when this was done in law, I'm sure people didn't think there'd ever be a day when you didn't have a daily newspaper.
Right.
You can look at Picayune and see that. Yeah, it's all state-driven, but these are good questions. But they keep looking like they could change it one day, but it's still a newspaper.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Of course, the paper's available electronically. I mean, that's how I get it. And I don't have all those papers to throw away.
But we still, the way this is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, we print all of these, official notices. It's with the hard copy. We don't just limit it. You can get it either way, but my point is it's got to be printed in the hard copy.
And nothing against Facebook, but it probably won't ever be Facebook.
I won't comment on that one.
Yeah. Any further discussion on that? We had a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Ms. Mayo. Seeing none, motion carries. Item 18, take appropriate action on the terms of the following members of various boards and districts. A, Ms. Joyce Doucette.
Defer for 30 days.
Second.
Recreation District Number 1 of Ward 8. I have a motion by Mr. Latour, second by Mr. Hunter, to defer for 30 days. B, Mr. H. Sonny Watkins in the Waterworks District Number 7 of Wards 4
defer to our
and
next
6.
regular meeting.
He resigned. Have a motion by Mr. McMillan, second by Mr. Hunter, to defer until the next meeting. C, Mr. Gerald Trimmy, Recreation District Number
Move to
1 of
reappoint.
Ward 4.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan to reappoint and a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. D, Ms. Debbie Fontenot,
Move to reappoint.
Waterworks District Number 8 of
Second.
Wards 3 and 8. I have a motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint Mr. Latour.
Yes, sir.
And a second by Mr. Hunter. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. E, Mr. J. William
reappoint.
Hankins, Chenault
Second.
International Airport Authority. Have a motion by Mr. Gilry to reappoint Mr. Gilry, and a second by Mr. Farnum. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. F, Workforce Development Board. Let's see, we got Ms. Tracy Fontenot, Dr. Neil Aspinwall, Mr. Matthew Hennings, Ms.
reappoint.
Carol Thibodeau,
Second.
Mr. Juana Felton, Ms. Karen Clapp,
All
Mr. Richard
bullets.
B. Smith, Ms. Cassie Henry, Mr. Tammy Colbreth, and Mr. Keith Cooley. All of those were all to reappoint. If we could, we'll just take a motion by Mr. Latour and a second by Ms. Mayo, just on that group to
Yes, sir.
reappoint. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, that passes. The last one, Mr. Troy Alzine,
I'm going to move to appoint him.
resigned, and we're going to appoint Mr. Rand Alford. And we had the motion by Mr. Latour and second by Mr. Mayo on that one. Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 19, consideration of adopting a resolution
Move on
of
19.
condolences
Second.
to be forwarded to the family of the late Charlie Oxley. Mr. McMillan.
Charlie was a store owner in Westlake. He basically started the grocery stores in Westlake. His son, KK's been up here, award-winning with the theater group in the Hall of Fame. Of course, his other son, Randy, a great guy here in Southwest Louisiana. I grew up one street behind his store, and at an early age as a kid, you could take Coke bottles and go to deposit the Coke bottles in a penny, 2 cents. I got them 2 cents by my age. And we could buy gum and
That was
stuff
in the
like
olden
that.
days.
That must be old. You used to get a nickel from when I was growing
Well,
up.
we were getting 1 and 2 pennies. But we would always find these Coke bottles located right behind the store. And what I later learned in life from Miss Oxley, that he was putting those Coke bottles out there for us kids to get them, bring them in, and we get free candy. What a great guy. He's just an icon of Westlake and Southwest Louisiana. So he'll be missed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Okay, and we had a motion by Mr. McMillan, a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Brain?
I got a nickel for Coke bottles. Yeah, I did too, guy. I got a nickel.
I'm much older.
Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We didn't know you were older. You don't have to, don't tell anybody. They won't know. Item 20, consideration of adopting a resolution of
Move on, item 20.
condolences to be forwarded to the family of the late Dr. Robert Hebert, past president of McNeese State University, which was a great man, great leader in the community. I remember meeting with him a number of times whenever we were first talking about doing the Seed Center years ago, and he was a big part of that, and certainly appreciate his service to the community. We had a motion by Mr. Hunter and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there further discussion? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, when I was younger, it was really hard to get Coke in glass bottles. We had moved on to plastic by then. But anyway, Dr. Hebert, when I first went to McNeese, he was still there, and he had a history degree and later a PhD. So he definitely outscored me in the degrees there. I'm just a lowly BA. But I really enjoyed my conversations that I had with him. He really enjoyed talking to the students and the faculty. We had a lot of great conversations about world history, about McNeese. He really taught me what it was to be a student and what a serious thing a college career was for a young adult. And I remember just one-on-one those conversations that he had, just looking at him talking to me and just thinking, wow, this is the president of McNeese, and he was taking time out of his schedule to sit and talk with me one-on-one. I will always remember that. And the impact that he's had on McNeese and Lake Charles, every corner you look at, you can see it. And when you've been at the head of an organization like McNeese for that long, you just can't deny that this man has had such an impact on Lake Charles. So prayers to the Hebert and McNeese family. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 21 is an advised item. If y'all would, just please look over those. A number of you have appointments coming up. 22 is also an advised that adjudicated property will be offered for sale by the Director of the Division of Planning and Development on Tuesday, June 28, 2016. Item 23, consideration of going into executive session to discuss lawsuit number 2016-001943, Gracie Lilly versus the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. Had a motion by Mr. Scott, second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, we are now in executive session.
Same level council report.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Andrew Pont to receive report and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. I need a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.